There's a lot of podcasts out there and they just think, well, I have a microphone and I can do it through GarageBand and all that. But there's a whole lot more that goes into it, even just besides the editing, getting it out there, getting the marketing and branding. And also you get it out there, but really it's leveraging the asset that you've created to educate your potential clients.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle with the Podcast Factory, and today I'm chatting with Brandon and Amanda, wealth advisors and hosts of the Grandma's Wealth Wisdom podcast. How are you all today?
Oh, doing great.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Wonderful. Hey, real quick, what is your business all about?
Yeah, in brief, we help people build wealth their grandma would be proud of. So we work with people to build financial plans that help them increase their wealth in a way that is sustainable and simple for the planet, for their wallets, for their future, all of those different ways you might think about sustainability and simplicity.
At what point did you both decide the time was right to add podcasting to your marketing strategy?
Yeah, so we've actually been podcasting for a while now. We used to have a business activist entrepreneur podcast, and we did that through coaching as we were kind of ending one phase of a business, learning about coaching and mentoring and teaching what we learned in running a sustainable business. We did that on our own, doing all the editing, doing everything on our own. And as we were kind of reimagining ourselves, podcasting has always been kind of a part in the past couple years, but also the idea of not doing all of the work, because we had done it for a long time, all of the work ourselves. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. And so how did you find out about the Podcast Factory, and what was it that drove you to reach out to Jonathan and his team?
As we were launching the financial side of our business, we were thinking about what does that look like. We had known podcasting was helpful and we were good at doing that and working together doing that kind of thing. And I think I came across a Facebook ad that he was sharing about what he was doing. And for us, knowing that, I think we were kind of his perfect ideal client, because we were looking for how are we going to get our message out there, and knowing how much time it takes to do a podcast. It's not just, hey, I have a microphone and we're going to just load it up and everything and that's it. There's a lot more behind the scenes. And so we were looking at, well, what do we do from here and how do we leverage our time more effectively? And so then we reached out to him, had a phone call, and the rest is history.
I would just add one thing to that. Brandon found the Podcast Factory first and was trying to convince me to reach out. And the one big thing that really made me say, okay, let's reach out and see what this is all about, is that we had just had our first child and I was the one that was doing all the editing of the podcast and all that. And I wanted to spend more time with my son rather than doing that kind of work. And so that's really what made me say yes. And then I think we'll probably get into this, but I found a whole lot more than just reclaiming my time as we started working together.
Wonderful. And that leads beautifully into the next question is, what results have you seen since you've started with the Podcast Factory?
Yeah, so I really loved how we took the time at the beginning to really get to know one another, and JR listened to what we were looking to do. And we were trying to decide, do we rebrand our current podcast? Do we start a new podcast? What do we do? And he really walked us through and helped us make the decision ourselves, like by asking some really great questions, that we decided to start a whole new podcast. And then he helped us come up with the name and the vibe and all of that kind of thing. And that was super helpful. It's now become our calling card, our brand, all those kinds of things, the name of the podcast rather than like the name of our business or even our own names. And so that was a huge benefit I didn't expect. And then from there, as we started recording episodes and putting them out, it was exactly what I expected. Very seamless, actually, maybe even a little beyond the expectations in terms of how much they remind us when we need to record new episodes, and that things happen without us having to think about it. We just have to record and send in the audio, and then it goes from there.
And were you surprised that it wasn't just we help you do the editing of the podcast? There's really a lot more behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely. I think, again, coming up with a name and a new brand and all that, we kind of knew we were going to do a podcast. We knew we wanted those anchor content that he says, the vault, but coming up with a new name, new logo, and then ultimately a new website. And I used Jonathan's web developer. And I was like, well, how's his site look? Let's talk to his guy. And so that direct response marketing idea really helped us to really find out who we are personally and our target audience. We're not really going after more of the baby boomers. That's not our target, but millennials and younger people who are trying to figure out, hey, my parents went through 2008 and now they are screwed in retirement. And how am I going to be different? And what do I do here? And so we're like, well, let's go back to some basics, really. And so that's where we leveraged. And now we leverage several podcasts for education of our clients as they come into our sphere. We share a podcast or two, and that really helps educate them, build more trust. So then they, in a sense, then would become clients.
That's awesome. That's a fantastic reusable asset.
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell me more about the name Grandma's Wealth Wisdom. How did you come up with that specifically?
It was actually I think it took us 2 different sessions of talking with JR, doing, him asking questions, getting to know who we are, what we want to be doing, who we want to be serving, all of that. And we brainstormed a bunch of different names and we just kept going with it. We'd do one session and then we'd sit on it for a little while and then we'd come back, and it took a while, but we got to it. And then that name felt the best out of the ones we'd come up with. And we could also imagine building the brand around it. We can imagine the character of Grandma and what she would be talking about, what she would be doing, the cookies she would bake. I started baking some cookies myself, all that.
So have you found that the name change and the process that Jonathan helped lead you through to come up with that, has that translated to being more relatable to your end customer?
The people that are our ideal clients, they get it, and it makes a lot of sense to them, and they're really excited to work with us. And so it's a really easy way to summarize what we're about without having to read a whole paragraph or whatever.
What are the 3 biggest benefits you've seen by being part of the Podcast Factory?
Well, I think definitely the name, and coming up with that kind of branding and name was a huge thing. And again, it doesn't tell our clients everything. It actually has them wondering and questioning. So then they come and ask, well, what does that mean? And so then there's a conversation that starts because of that. So the name has been super, super helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah. And all the time I've gotten back to grow our business, spend with my son, and not have to stress out about, quickly editing it the day before it's going to publish. In addition to that, writing the show notes. And I've started using the show notes as a big chunk of my email that I send out. So that shortens the amount of time I have to spend with emailing. The social media images that are created that we just have to share when we remember to share. And so those are some of the big benefits, as well as, taking some of those episodes and sharing them with clients and building that trust with them, I think has been a huge benefit, especially this one little series we made of 3 episodes. It's a really great primer to what we do. And we've started sharing that with every single client when they're going through the process to help them get to know better what we're doing and why we do it and how it can benefit them in a plethora of different ways. That series really helps with that. And so that's been a huge benefit already.
Final question. What would you say to other business owners looking to add podcasting?
I would say find somebody to do the back end of it. Everybody wants to be a podcaster, I feel like, or there's a lot of podcasts out there and they just think, well, I have a microphone and I can do it through GarageBand and all that. But there's a whole lot more that goes into it. Even just besides the editing, getting it out there, getting the marketing and branding, and also you get it out there, but really it's leveraging the asset that you've created to educate your potential clients. There's so much that can happen. And I think we've seen our numbers increase, not necessarily because iTunes is saying, oh, look at these guys, but we are leveraging that asset to educate our clients or potential clients. And that again is where using these kind of things, it's collateral, that you're using that collateral to grow your business. And as I'm a business owner, I will forget what I created 3-4 months ago. And so trying to figure out as well how to put that as part of our systems in place, that these pieces of content, I need to have them as systems that are part of our email sequence or whatever else.
Anything else you'd like to add, Amanda, to that?
Yeah, I did interview a couple other like branding expert kind of things when we were thinking about hiring JR and the Podcast Factory to see maybe we could do this and maybe like hodgepodge our own stuff together, like have a branding expert, then hire someone else to edit the podcast and that kind of thing. And the thing that I think really what sets apart hiring just one service to help do all of that is they get what you're doing. If you want to start a podcast and how you want to use it, then that it can inform your brand. Whereas if you puzzle piece things together, then you might get it, but then you have to explain it. The branding person, the expert that you might hire to help you with branding won't necessarily be a podcast expert. So they won't know how that brand will influence how people listen or don't listen to the podcast or that kind of thing. So it's super important as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, to get clear on your brand, who you're trying to serve, all of those kinds of things. And if you're going to have a podcast be the way that your brand gets out there to the world, then you need a person to help you develop your ideal customer avatar, all of those things, who gets podcasting too. And so that's why I think having that one service makes a lot of sense.
That's beautiful. That's great. Anything else either one of you would like to add before we finish this up?
I wanted to say JR is definitely the face of the organization. We talked to him, but really I think Cupcake is what they call her. She's the one that is like sending us messaging and saying, hey, you haven't recorded an episode, we need to do this really soon. And also they're really flexible, and, creating content every week is a very difficult thing. And so bearing with us as we're trying to do that while also creating workshops and clients facing stuff. Like we can't just produce content. We need to actually serve our clients. And so that's been super helpful of having Rachel and the team there engaging with us and saying, hey, don't forget about this. That's been helpful for us.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I've enjoyed chatting with you both and appreciate you guys.
Awesome. Check out Grandma's Wealth Wisdom.
Wonderful.
Thank you.